Hey everybody, back again with another card for you. Gonna be posting this thing to the page here. Give me just a second for it to catch up. And there it is. Okay, cool. Now I'm going to, like I said, post this over to the page. This is the classic Wasp character from the Avengers, and you may know her from Ant-Man as well. This is now Hope's mother, the original Wasp, which is Janet Von Dyne. And I just wanted to check this out and see what I could do with this one, because she is so cool. I'm an old school Avengers fan from as far as I can remember, and I really like the older stuff. And I say by the older stuff, I mean the 70s and 80s stuff from when I was little. And that was just one of those things. The Avengers comics were always there. They were always the first ones on the rack every time. Not necessarily alphabetical order. It's just that the shop owner liked to rack them up that way, and he put Avengers and Batman up front because those were his two favorite books, which just cracked me up to no end, because he'd been reading them since Batman started. This is the I was, I guess, 4 or 5 at the time, and this is late 70s, early 80s, and he was a hardcore collector from back in the day when he was a kid, and he was an older guy at the time, and I mean like elderly, like in his 80s, if not older. And it was one of the only places in town that you could get, because I lived in a little farm town and in Texas, and he was one of the only people that would carry it for like miles. And he carried it in his pharmacy. It was a local small town pharmacy, and he had owned this place for years. And I would go in and get those comic books, and he would let me sit, as long as I promised not to bend them up, he would let me sit and read them to see if I wanted to get them or not. And I was the only, because I could only get a few, because it was my allowance. And yes, at 5 I had an allowance. I had a chore list too, believe me. But that was just life. But yeah, it was one of those things where I could go in and actually sit down. He had this little table where the ladies would come in and sit, and they would have coffee or whatever there, because he had a little coffee setup type of deal, and they would grab coffee and sit and wait for their prescriptions to be filled, or whatever. And sometimes people would just come in and sit just to sit and talk to him. And I remember that he would let me sit at that table if it wasn't occupied already and read comic books. And I would get to see everything, whether I got it or not. I would be able to see everything and really get to pick and choose which stories that I wanted to dive into. So, hey Richard, hey Tigan, how's it going? Just saying hi to people popping on. I appreciate it. But yeah, that I just would sit and read these things like crazy, and I would get to get all of the latest stuff, and I would pick a couple, that I could afford, and because it was like I don't know, my allowance was like $10 or something crazy like that, and my mom worked there at the time when I was a kid, and she would bring me in on New Magazine Day, and I would get to sit and read after school, and get to figure out what I was gonna take home with me that evening. And Yeah, it was wild, man. That one day out of the month, I got to come in and sit. Otherwise, I had to go home and go home straight from school and take care of what I had to take care of. But that's like I said, I wasn't mistreated or anything. That's the way life was. We took care of stuff, and we had responsibilities no matter how old you were. I mean, they weren't slave drivers or anything. My parents, they were really good. So I don't need an Oprah moment or anything strange like that. It's all good. Um, it was life, and I would get a couple of comic books, because back then they were still, I think, um, up until like '83, they were, I might be mistaken, but I think they went up to 90 cents or maybe $1 in '87 or '88. And up until then, they were like 60 cents and then 75 cents, and then they went up and up and up. But yeah, it was wild. And when I was little, I used to get that. I used to get those comics and would just get them. And I even remember getting a few for $0.25, which was nuts. Because it was right before they all went up to 35 cents, and then on up from there. But the average was, I believe 60, and then it jumped up to 75 cents at the time. And I'm showing my age here. I mean, I'm only 41, but still, the 70s and 80s for comic books were really cool, man. That was just the cream of the crop. I mean, if you missed the first generation and you missed the 60s premieres of those comics, at least for the Marvel age, there was a lot going on there, And then as you got into it, of course, DC was making their big jump from the, I don't want to say goofiness, I want to say wholesome stuff, because they were getting out of the wholesome stuff and getting back into the darker, the background, more mature stuff that they used to have when the series was, or when the books were starting out, not the series, but the books were starting out. Because when they were back in the 30s and 40s, man, they didn't, that stuff was either really cool and really unrestricted, or it was to the opposite, to where it was very wholesome and very down to earth, depending on who they wanted to read it at the time. So, you had to go check out some of that older stuff, because they got pretty risque and pretty serious in their storylines with that stuff back then. But I specifically remember picking up a couple of Avengers books, and Wasp was on the cover. It was Wasp and Mockingbird, and a couple of the other, She-Hulk, I believe, was involved, and a bunch of the guys had vanished, and they were talking about the ladies having to take over in this particular issue. I can't remember the number. I'll have to pull it out and check. It's in my archive of comics, but I'll have to pull it out. But yeah, I remember all the ladies being on the cover, and it was just phenomenal. Of course, that was a later issue too, being my favorite. Not necessarily when I was that young, because I think it was a little bit later. But they hadn't split them up the East Coast, West Coast Avengers yet. It was still just the Avengers. So, but I remember Wasp and She-Hulk and Mockingbird being on the cover, which I found just amazing. And I don't think the Scarlet Witch was on that one. I may be mistaken, because, like I said, I haven't looked at it in a long time. But the Scarlet Witch may have been on there as well. But all the guys had been taken or something, and it was a female character-driven story, which I really dug at the time, because that just didn't happen much. I mean, unless it was like Wonder Woman or something from DC, that didn't happen much in Marvel, because it was always the damsel in distress or the females in the background, like Storm and Jean Grey and whatnot. Most of their powers were long-range powers and not necessarily just something you would see up front. And when I was prepping for the show today, I got asked why I don't draw more female characters. Um, that's funny because I draw females all the time. It's just I don't do them in these cards because um, it's weird. I don't want to bother the kids that watch me, but you know, there's a lot of select people that follow artists specifically for female characters and such, and I don't do a lot of that because then no one will watch the regular cards. I mean, you know, the guy cards, because of the fact that they want me to do the females over and over and over, and it's just it gets overrun and gets a little awkward at times because I don't do a bunch of pinups and things like that, and I don't do a lot of material in that regard. I just got asked to do the Cherry set that's coming out. I don't know if you guys know Cherry or not. She's kind of like it's in the style of the Archie's comics, and the creator Larry left Archie, and he got fired from the company and created his own spin-off book with a character called Cherry, and she was a little risque here and there, and I wasn't a collector or a reader of her, but I had known the book because I had friends that had it, but I just got picked up to do that card, and I'm going to be doing some I think a set of 15 or 20 exclusive artist run on that, and I may do one of those cards if you guys want to see. I may do one of those cards, maybe even 2 or 3 of them as a couple of these showings, because of the fact that they're not going to be adult in nature. I don't do nude stuff. You know, I have trouble showing nurples on here because of the kids that I have on my following, which I really don't want to disrespect the promises to their parents and whatnot for taking care of them as they're watching. So no problem there. But they're going to be, you know, like I said, they're just going to be cutesy pinup stuff. And if you guys want to watch, awesome. If not, that's cool too. Just let me know in the comments if you're interested, and I'll show those. Because they're not going to be, you know, I don't have to hide them because they're not going to be something that's not going to be seen. You know, they definitely are going to get in the set. I am that's a paid project. I am doing them, and I don't normally do a lot of cards for sets like that. But in this particular case, though, I was referred by my good longtime friend, Mr. Rusty Gilligan. And if you guys don't know his Mac and Trouble, plug. I'm not one to really do that, but I love the dude's book. He's funny, and the book is good. So, and I'm working on a project with him coming up here pretty quick with the Symbol once my books come out a little bit later. And we've got a side project going on that I previously mentioned, which is going to be fun. But yeah, I get asked all the time, "Oh, where's my project? Where's my books?" I'm working on them. If I'm not done with them already, it's because they got bumped. It just depends on how I was doing them for favors or not, because of the fact that I got strapped. It's like, well, you do this every day. Well, yes, I have to. I'm over 200 cards in. I must. So, but yeah, this is gonna be cool. And I totally got sidetracked with what I was talking about with Rusty and the card promo. If you guys, like I said, if you guys want to see, that's great. If not, that's fine too. Because I have some other cards that I had sent out for a travel company for a Mardi Gras set that they're doing, and that was supposed to be for their cruise line. And I'm hoping that they got them. You know, I just thought about that, and I haven't checked in to see if they got them yet, because it's been a while since I sent them off versus when they wanted them. So you know, they asked me to send them out, so I did, and it was a little bit early, but we'll see where it goes. I'll have to call and find out where those cards are, because hopefully they didn't disappear, which does happen sometimes. I've known a lot of postal workers. My great-grandfather was a postal worker for years and years and years. And, you know, the postmen around here, they just, man, stuff just vanishes once in a while. And I hear a lot more and more of that's happening. And that's horrible, that people have to feel the need to take other people's property just because of the fact that they can. But hopefully that didn't happen to everybody's stuff. That hasn't happened here in a long time. The postman we have is generally a good guy, and it shouldn't be a problem. But anyway, I digress. So I'm going with the classic crescent eyes. Have the little, almost like the cat eye thing going on. And I gave her a little bit of a visor, which came in later. But I really like it. So I thought it gave it a little bit of a hip twist. So there we go. I know a lot of the purists will be going, that's not right. I apologize now, because I wanted to make it a little different. But no, I didn't mistakenly do this. I did it on purpose. I did it on purpose. So if you notice it, good. Of course, you're going to now because I pointed it out, but still. And I'm going to leave this open today. I'm not going to shadow this out black. I'm going to leave this open today so that we can have everything show through the way I want it to, which is going to be a super dark gray on her suit and then a maroon color red. And I want that to reflect this classic look, because they didn't, they blacked it out hard black back in the day, and I didn't want to have that go on. I didn't like the look of that, so I wanted to do something a little different. But anyway, I'm going to put in the classic Kirby style stinger to her costume, which is whenever she would flare up her stingers, which are in her gloves, she would have this really cool little ribbon go around her hands like this. And it's just like a kind of a Doctor Strange type of thing where it would come up and go around. Here we go. Now we got this one over here. And like I said, it's just this little bit of energy burst kind of thing, and it pops up on top this way, like that. And then down under, right across here. Okay, cool deal. Now I'm going to draw in the back of that hip and the belt right there. And this goes down into a skirt, and here's the control dial that she has, just like Hank had, and now Scott Lang has. I'm going to tip it to one side because I want it to look angular, where her pelvis is turned. But let me see here. I think I've got everything except her eyes in. And her eyes are fairly easy. Just go cut those right there. Bing, bing. and we'll see that through the visor. Cut that down just a little bit. There we go. Cool deal. And like I said, most people would go in and cut this down and shadow this out, but I'm not, because I want to leave it open for the that gray color look. I'll cut in a little bit more of those neck muscles there and put a little under shadow so it doesn't look like she's got a weird ostrich neck or something. She has no jaw. Where's her jaw? There we go. Cool deal. I'm underpinning the light. See that that shoulder pad and that lifted, almost I guess it's a shoulder pad or a shield. You know, that wing that comes off there a little bit. Got to be careful to round this up, because if you ever go flat on the breast line like that, you have to be very careful, you know, to match it out, because what will end up happening is you'll flatten it out, and then you'll lose all the dimension, and it'll make her look like she's squashed. You don't want to do that. The only reason I'm doing this is specifically because it's the maroon side. I just want to add a little shading to that to make everything balance out and have a little weight to it. But I would normally do the Venom blackout style lining and whatnot, but on this one I'm not doing that, because like I said, I want to leave that open to where this is going to show a little bit of shadow in the color edge, and then leave the black for a dark gray instead. That way it'll balance out a little more, and it just looks nicer to me, because I think guys overwork this stuff these days to the extreme, trying to get that semi-realistic look. And when you do that, you end up choking out the rest of the artwork. And I mean, like I said, I know my style is really cartoony, but still, nonetheless. So, with that said, now that I've done that, though, I've got to balance out this helmet. It almost looks like an elven type of thing from Lord of the Rings, so maybe they got inspired by that. I don't know. Maybe they looked at some old comics. Of course, I know they didn't do that, but you know, it's funny nonetheless. Kind of putting in some details here without, like I said, without blacking everything out, because this is going to be black or dark gray in this case. So, hope you guys dig it. There she is. We have the Wasp. So, I don't know what I'm going to do tomorrow just yet. I'll let you guys know in the morning. But thank you so much for checking it out, watching it, checking it out, and watching and checking it out and watching. Did I mention that already? So we will see you guys tomorrow. Be nice to somebody. Say something nice. Smile, hug, whatever you got to do. Make somebody laugh. Make a kid laugh. Do something kind in the world. Catch you later. Take care.